Intro music, intro music. Alrighty, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Comics Run the World. I'm obviously Orion, and here with me is, as always,
Woody. What's up, guys? How's it going, dude? How was your week?
pretty good. It's a lot of schoolwork, a lot
Feel
of
that?
assignments, a lot of reading, actual books.
Not comics.
Which sucks. For one of my classes, I have to read basically half a book by it's on Tuesday. I had to read it by Thursday, so I had to read half a book by Thursday. So I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna read a whole book by Thursday. I'm just gonna go online
Spark
and
notes.
read the summaries. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I got time for that.
feel that.
But anyways, today is a special episode because with the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania coming out soon, we decided to dip our toes into the villain of that movie, which is Kang the Conqueror. So I want to pose this question to you, Woody. When was the first time you ever heard of the character Kang the Conqueror?
That's actually a perfect little intro to what I'm about to show you.
Awesome.
This is probably one of my favorite single issues that I own. I'm not really a big collector of key issues. I
Mhm.
usually just kind of go like, "Ooh, that's some cool cover art," and then I buy it. And
Yeah.
the back bins. But this was actually the first time I found out who he was. And then later I got to know him through the TV show Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes.
Nice.
Really highly recommend that show if you haven't seen it. That's where I really got to know the character. But I bought this comic. It's the first appearance of the Council of Kangs.
Oh, that's cool.
Avengers
Damn.
267. And it's an awesome cover.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's sick, man.
That's where I saw that this cover and I was like, who is that guy? And I still ended up buying it, and then I watched the show,
Mhm.
loved him on there, and then now through these comics and obviously through the MCU.
Awesome, yeah. As for me, I think I learned about him through the internet. I was looking at different Marvel Avengers villains, and I saw Kang the Conqueror, and obviously with the type of appearance he has with the green, purple, blue face, he kind of struck me as interesting. More as the fact that he's not really physically opposing, but more of intellectual, more basically smarter and more technologically advanced compared to the Avengers. So I always thought he was an interesting villain. I'm excited to have him be the next big bad of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm just excited to see what kind of role he plays in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Yeah. Have you seen that show? The Earth's Mightiest
I have not.
Earth's Mightiest Heroes, I think.
A lot of people recommended it, but I've never gotten around to actually watching it. But it does look good because a lot of people say they compare it to the Justice League animated series, which is kind of already a high bar in my image, but it's kind of what it is for Marvel animation, I guess.
Yeah, it's what I recommend to people who aren't necessarily interested in reading comics, but kind of want more of a background knowledge, because it very quickly goes through a lot of the best villains and some of the best stories of Marvel Comics quickly, but very well at the same time. Does it in a really great way, but in bite-sized episodes.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely have to check that out now. So the topic of today, obviously being Kang the Conqueror, but the way we're structuring it is the following. Basically, I read 2 of his more earlier comics from the Silver Age, and Woody read 2 more modern, recent comic books of Kang the Conqueror. And then at the end, we both read the same storyline, Avengers Foever. We both read issues number 1 through 6. And today we'll be covering his first, technically 2 appearances, 2 stories from current times, obviously, and obviously Avengers Foever towards the end. Now, I find it's interesting because Kang the Conqueror basically has 2 appearances.
Because there's so many different iterations.
Yeah, there's so many iterations of Kang, and that's what makes him an interesting character, because there's one version of Kang, but there's also you like it won't be revealed until like much later. Like, oh, this was like another version of Kang, which was the case for the two single issues I read. As for the first one, I read Fantastic Four issue number 19, the first appearance of what he's going by then, Rama Tut, basically the king of Egypt at the time, and it's very interesting to say the least because they are we'll get to it later, but there are aspects in this issue that ties into Avengers Forever, which I thought was really interesting. So I'm just going over the brief synopsis of what the comic book entailed. So first, the Fantastic Four go back in time to find a radioactive herb to cure Alicia's blindness. Now, if you guys don't already know, Alicia is Ben Grimm's, aka the Thing's love interest, and she's blind. So obviously the Thing is very excited and wants to go back in time to get this cure for her, but they don't know how to do it because how do you time travel? So they go to the abandoned Castle Doom, where they use Dr. Doom's time machine, and they travel back to ancient Egypt and are greeted by soldiers and then later captured by Rama Tut via this gun called the Ultra Diode Ray. So it is later revealed that he's a time traveler and from the year 3000 because he hated how peaceful the future was. As you know, any villain's origin story is he hates peace. He wants chaos.
That's some Silver Age writing right there.
Yeah. And I love Silver Age writing because of how ridiculous it is. It's
so corny. So, oh my God.
So it's so descriptive without it needing to be descriptive.
Yeah. The dialogue is just like the characters telling each other what they're doing or what's happening, and it's so ridiculous.
Yeah. But that's like, especially in like the latter issue that I read, it goes there. It goes there. So basically, the way that Kang travels back to ancient Egypt and kind of adds to like the lore of like basically human history is the fact that he basically constructs a sphinx, and it itself is like a time machine. So the sphinx goes back in time to ancient Egypt and crash lands in the desert, and all the people who are already residing there are saying, "Oh my God, what is this miracle that was bestowed upon us?" And of course, Kang being Kang, it was pretty easy to basically be their rulers, essentially. So he's obviously their rulers. And then after he gives like his origin story, as any Silver Age villain would, go on a whole spiel about their origins, how they got there. He later enslaves the Fantastic Four. To go more specifics, Sue Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, is now obviously his queen. Ben Grimm, aka the Thing, is doing manual labor, obviously because he's like the big brute. Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, is the court jester, and Reed Richards is kind of like a watchman. Like he watches over like the wall, make sure everything's okay, and if there's any projectiles coming at towards them, he stretches out and then like blocks it with his elastic body. Classic Silver Age shenanigans here. What happens next is kind of like a rough oversimplification, but that's kind of like the gist of what I got. So obviously the Fantastic Four got their powers from cosmic rays. So obviously Ben Grimm is out in the sun doing manual labor, and as he's doing manual labor, it's so hot. The sun's rays are like impacting everyone, obviously because it's so hot and intense. And it's so intense that Ben Grimm turns back to human form because of how hot it was, essentially, how powerful the sun's rays were against him. So I thought, I was like, oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
I was like, whatever drives the plot,
Yeah.
So obviously him in human form, the chains are obviously meant for for the Thing. So him reverting back to Ben Grimm, the chains are loose and he escapes. He goes and saves Sue by stealing King Rama Tut's in this instance. His diode ray zaps Sue, and then Sue then later saves the rest of the Fantastic Four. They chase after Ramatut, but he escapes. And after all this shenanigans, at the end, they're after this radioactive herb to cure Alicia's blindness, but after all the stuff they went through, it was later found out once they got back to their present time that the time machine does not permit anything coming to or from any point in time. So all of that was basically just like a waste
for nothing.
Because Ben Grimm was like so excited, and then Reed was like, "Well, buddy, we got some bad news. It's not here." So, but that's basically it. That's basically the main gist of his first technical appearance as Ramatut, Pharaoh of Egypt. Again, I'll say this: I love Silver Age comic books because of how ridiculous it is. It's great because it's great because when you read like a character's origin story, and you read some of his comic books like in like current modern age, you can see what they've pulled from his original appearance and woven into like whatever they're doing right now, whether the character has been revamped, rebooted, retconned, anything like that. It's really interesting to see like their origin in that respect.
One of the comics I read kind of tells like the story of Kang, just like all iterations of him, and a lot of the stuff you said it talks about. So like as you were saying it, I was like, well, I kind of read about that, and so it is really cool.
So up next, his first official appearance as Kang the Conqueror was in Avengers number 8. Now, as I said before, Silver Age campiness in a Fantastic Four, it gets amped up a little bit in this one. Right? I was like, whoa. Again, so the basic gist of the story is the Avengers are called forth by the U.S. military to investigate a UFO. They go to the UFO, and Kang emerges from the ship, declaring his demands to be met, as any villain would. Demands must be met within a 24-hour time period, or else I'll decimate all of you. That's basically what we get at from here. What I like about this is like how Kang being just like this like thing, essentially. It's like just like this entity, and like it does a really up close face shot of Kang, and I just think it's hilarious because his head is like huge, but like the blue face part is like average size and like small. So I thought it was funny.
A question I have about these like earlier comics: was he just a blue guy back then, or was it actually like armor? Still,
it's like so like in this instance, it's actually like his like green and purple armor with his blue face.
Okay,
I think that's just like his armor and his like get up essentially. I'm pretty sure he's like human underneath.
Because I knew like obviously like now he's it's human, it's armor, it's his. Yeah. But I always wondered like back when they first came up with him if he was just actually a blue guy. So I just had to ask.
I mean, honestly, I feel like that's what they were going for at first, and then they're like, nah, let's just make him human. So here's where it gets interesting. So Kang obviously battles the Fantastic Four. Not the Fantastic Four, but the Avengers. But he just basically doesn't really do anything because he just stands there, and like the type of technology he has overwhelms the Avengers to a point where it's like shocked and like what's going on. And in an instance of that, it was like Thor being part of the Avengers. He flings Mjolnir at Kang. Nothing can stop Mjolnir when it's thrown. Kang, instead of stepping to the side, he sends it out of space time and then basically reverts it back to space time, and it hits Thor, which I thought was pretty interesting, and it kind of shows like how big of an imposing threat Kang is, because he can just do all these things on a whim, and with like just like solely on like technology, which is very interesting.
That's really cool.
Now here comes the Silver Age part. There's this guy named the Undersecretary, and basically he comes in and says like, "Don't worry, guys, I get this covered. I can take him down, like diplomatically in a sense." And I'm like, why not? So, as any Silver Age villain's fashion, again, Kang goes into full detail about his origins and where he came from and all of that. So Kang explains that he was Ramatut, revealing that that was Kang. And he tried to time travel back to his time period once he escaped the Fantastic Four, but he overshot by 1,000 years. So instead of going to the year 3,000, he goes to the year 4,000, and is stuck there for a little bit. The time period, the atmosphere of the year 4,000 is basically just like dystopian, war torn, barbaric, and Kang being Kang being a conqueror, he leads the forces of like whatever is left there, and gets help from them to obviously get sent back in time. And from there, he like witnesses like the technology they have in like that time period. And I think he said something along the line where like it's so technologically advanced and so complex that he finds it difficult how like they could comprehend something that they constructed like that. So with such high tech technology, obviously, he goes back to their current time period and captures the Avengers and subjects them to a paralysis beam that weakens them. Basically, what it does is, if you guys don't already know, back then, Thor was actually two people. He was Donald Blake, basically a weak cripple, and he smacks his cane down on the floor, and he becomes Thor essentially. So what the paralysis beam does, Thor turns back into Donald Blake. Giant Man, who's an original member of the Avengers, aka Ant-Man, but he goes by Giant Man in this time period. He cannot change size, so he's just stuck there, maintaining his current size. Iron Man's chest device isn't working, so he's kind of like struggling to breathe. He's like being suffocated essentially, and Captain America's shield is basically just pressing down on him constantly, so he can't really get up. So Kang gives the leaders of the world an ultimatum to surrender, or I'll destroy everything. Classic.
Yeah.
And for the main Avengers lineup, it's Iron Man, Thor. Captain America comes up in issue, I think, 3 of the Avengers. So he's not an original member, but like he shows up. So in this sense, it's Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Giant Man, and Wasp. So Wasp and the guy who united the Avengers, Rick Jones, goes to get help. Wasp goes to Avengers HQ, gets a weapon, and Rick Jones assembles the greatest team of all, the Teen Brigade, to help against Kang the Conqueror, which is literally a bunch of teenagers.
Teen Brigade. I've never heard of them.
Yeah.
Never heard of them.
This is the first time I'm hearing from them too, so I was like, fair enough. So basically what the Team Brigade does in this instance is they say like, oh, Kang, we're going to join your forces. And of course, Kang, without a moment's hesitation, says, okay, yeah, you just go on my ship and just like look around, obviously.
Yeah.
So they create a distraction, and so that Rick Jones can free the Avengers. Avengers versus Kang happening again. But the weapon that Wasp retrieved, she gives it to Giant Man and fires it at Kang, which is basically a solvent that says that it dissolves any fabric, wiring, and insulation. Very specific. Very specific to Kang, essentially, which is, I was like, all right. Luckily, they had that handy in their Avengers HQ. So as a last-ditch effort, Kang releases a neutrino bomb, but Iron Man intervenes. Kang unleashes radiation from his mask, because apparently he can do that. But Thor being Thor, he uses Mjolnir to absorb all the radiation and fires it back at Kang. It gets too much for Kang, so Kang retreats back to his time period, and that's how it ends.
The day is saved.
Yes, the day is saved. Thanks to Rick Jones and the Team Brigade.
We need a Team Brigade movie in the MCU.
Make it happen, Kevin Feige. We got to make this happen, or else I'm going to be very upset.
Team Brigade.
So
that is new to me.
Yeah, it's something common that I found, at least in like Silver Age comic books, because for out in the DC side, for like the New Gods, there's just like the newspaper Legion, I think they're called. Basically, like little kids, pre-adolescent kids, and they're interwoven with like the New Gods. So I think it's like a theme, having like a group of like young kids and like being woven into like these like cosmic, enormous, like scaled events, and with these different teams and groups of people. So I think that's like a common theme that happened, I guess. But
so maybe Thor: Love and Thunder was just pulling from the Silver Age with that.
It must have been. That must be the only explanation. Hopefully, if that was it, then I give it some credit. But if not, then it is what it is. So those were the two issues I read. I enjoy it because I enjoy reading Silver Age stuff, and I just love, because they're both Jack Kirby art. So I always appreciate that, and they're both written by Stan Lee. So I always appreciate, no matter how goofy it is, Stan Lee's classic Silver Age writing. And just like, obviously we'll get to it later on in the episode, but a lot of things from these two issues I gathered that were, there's like some aspects that were pulled and like from there into Avengers Forever. So those were the two issues I read. Now, enough about me talking. Let's hear about your comic books that you read.
Yeah, like you said, not this first one, but the second one. I mean, almost everything you said ties back into it. But the first one that I read is called Timeless. It's I've got it right here. I got it from my LCS. It's basically, well, actually, it's really a starting point for Jed MacKay's new Avengers run. That's what I kind of found out about it. That's what it is. But it's also kind of a look into Marvel's 2023 slate of comics. There's a couple images where like Kang's stuck in the time sphere, and you see this one picture that caught my eye. It's Ghost Rider with Wolverine claws. Supposedly there's going to be some kind of Ghost Rider Wolverine comic coming out this year. So it's both of those things really, but it's also a Kang story, and it's also a really good Kang story. So it starts out sorry, my allergies are killing me right now. Always happens January to February, always.
Yeah.
There's a city of like with just this wealth of knowledge being destroyed, and it's a monologue or narration of Kang. And he said it's in his early days he used to read about it, and he was like, I don't know why anyone would do that, but you find out it's him destroying the city. And it's because he's looking for this missing moment. Supposedly there is 1 second in history he's not able to figure out what it is. Like, he's able to look through all of time. He sees what everything's going to be except for this 1 second, this one missing moment. And there's this random alien there, and he's like, what's the missing moment? And the alien tells him, but we can't read what it is. It's like, little like scribbles.
Right.
And he gasps, and supposedly whatever the moment is, it must be met by heroes, is what he's told.
Okay.
And the alien scoffs at him. He's like, ha, you're not going to get it. So Kang blows his head off. And
classic.
Then next comes my favorite moment of the comic. It's Kang kind of just like thinking out loud, basically. And he says, my passion has been slipping from me. I am bored. And he begins to wonder, he's like, is this when I become Immortus? Like, is this when, I'm done being Kang the Conqueror and I become Immortus? I thought that part was really, really interesting. Just like listening to Kang, his thoughts, and it kind of, it makes him more relatable, more of an actual human than just some Silver Age villain that wants to take over the world. And then this new character called Myrddin, Myrddin. They look, I don't know what they look like, almost like an elf, but they've got like this helmet on, and they enter the ship, Kang's ship, without him knowing. They like shut down his security, and he's like, how are you doing this? And then this Myrddin character summons more people on the ship who are the Twilight Court. I guess these are going to be brand new characters for this Avengers run. They're pretty much like the Knights of the Round Table, like King Arthur, like all that. That's basically what they are.
Okay.
So Kang retreats into the time sphere, and this is when you see the upcoming events from 2023. Ghost Rider, there's a shot of Iron Man with an empty alcohol bottle, so I guess they're going to pull from that old story.
Okay.
So basically, the Knights of the Round Table they're called the Twilight Court.
Okay.
They start chasing him across the time sphere. He's battling them. He doesn't defeat any of them, but he kind of either outsmarts them or escapes really cleverly. And then eventually he ends up in front of all of them, and he does a trial by combat with this character that reminded me a lot of Taskmaster.
Okay.
And he uses his wits to anger, because he's like, this guy is better than me, but he uses his wits to anger him so that he starts, being a little careless, and then beats him. And then he tells the Knights of the Round Table, Twilight Court, that this guy, this Murden, that he also wants this missing moment. And he's like, I'm a villain, and I want this missing moment, which means this guy is also a villain.
Right.
And then as he's saying this, Murden stabs him in the back. He's bleeding out, and his last-ditch effort is something with his suit where he uses armor to escape to null time. I didn't really know what that meant, null time. Looks kind of just like an area between time, basically, I think.
Okay.
This was really interesting. It did its job. It made me want to read Jed MacKay's Avengers, and Jed MacKay is amazing. He's like my favorite current writer. He's like, all right, I've got one more trick. I've got to require my own heroes. So maybe Kang's about to be the hero. Maybe he's going to team up with the Avengers. I don't know. But
maybe
the last shot of the comic is Murden with some chess pieces. One is Kang, and it's on the ground. There's another that's Doctor Doom. There's another that's Ultron. And then one of them I think is Mr. Mr. Sinister, and the other one I had no idea. It's kind of like, can't see it. And the final quote he says is, I am all that remains. So maybe he's, I don't know, the one who remains, or who knows? Who knows who he is? But
I like the villain trope of just the villain playing with chess to allude to there are pawns in my schemes.
And he says that Kang would have known who he was if he would have taken off the mask, and that he eventually will take off the mask. So it must be someone we know. So yeah, it was. I found it to be a really good story. I think the missing moment thing is really cool. Yeah, I think it's a fun story, and I'm excited for Jed MacKay's Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good overall story.
Jed MacKay is doing the Moon Knight run right now, isn't he?
So good.
Yeah, I read Volume 1. I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
I mean, I might read it after this. Honestly, it sounds cool because not only is it a cool Kane story, but also sets up the future of Marvel Comics for 2023, right?
Yeah, that pretty much. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So definitely, if I ever for some reason start getting into current comic books, I'll
this one will do it.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Also, I mean, the beginning I thought had the best Kang moments, when I said when he's my passion's slipping, I'm bored, and then he's blowing the alien's head off, and he's kind of there's a panel where he's really thinking to himself is this where I become Immortus? And it was really interesting seeing all that.
Awesome.
But this next one I thought was amazing. Although this is, and we'll talk about this with Avengers Forever as well. Time travel is convoluted.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
I put this one down a couple times. I reread a couple issues. After I finished it, I watched Comics Explained has a video on it. Listened to the whole thing. And then after that, I reread it again.
Okay.
Not because it's that convoluted. It's not that. I don't think it's as bad as Avengers Forever, but I don't know. Time travel always, gets a little messy.
Yeah.
But this one, I think, is a perfect starting place if you want to get into Kang. Obviously, the issues you read. But but it's called Kang the Conqueror, Only Myself Left to Conquer. And it kind of just goes through all of Kang's life, in a sense.
Ooh,
so it starts with Nathaniel Richards as a kid in the distant future. And he's basically, he's like one of those kids that he wants to live in the past. The people now that are like, oh, I wish I lived in the 80s. He's like, that's him. But he's like, oh, I wish I lived back then. It was so adventurous, all that kind of stuff. So he goes back in time to a museum just looking for knowledge, about the old world. He runs to a Doombot there, and then he also runs into Kang the Conqueror, him when he's older. Kang throws the Doombot through a time portal. Don't know where it goes, but it goes somewhere. And he also tells Nathaniel, I like this. He was like, you'll learn to only trust firsthand sources. So I thought that was kind of funny. And he basically tells Nathaniel, is like, follow me and I'll show you the mysteries of the cosmos. That basic spiel, like,
Yeah.
I'll show you. And Nathaniel's like, okay. So they go to 65 million BC, with the dinosaurs and all that. And he basically starts teaching Nathaniel how to become Kang. He teaches him how to shoot, how to kill, how to do all that. It's basically training him to become him. But he tells him the one rule of being Kang is you can never love.
Okay.
This is where I don't know if this is retconny. Because I don't know a lot about Kang in general. So maybe some of this is like, I'm sure it retcons something because it goes through all of his past. And I think it kind of maybe pulls inspiration from Mr. Freeze. We'll get to all that. But, of course, Nathaniel sneaks off one night. He finds a woman. There's like a tribe. Pretty much falls in love with her. And one of my favorite moments is he comes back and she had told him something about like living in the space between the stars or something. And as Nathaniel comes back, he's like all excited. And Kang is repeating that line to himself, like muttering, like remembering how happy it made him. But now he's like this broken man.
Right.
So eventually Nathaniel has enough of Kang. He's, keeps telling him stop loving. He's, so he steals Kang's armor and ends up in Rama Tut's era.
Okay.
That's where he ends up going. And he is met there with Moon Knight, who is actually this woman called Ravana.
Okay.
She becomes a major player of Kang's life. And Kang had mentioned her to Nathaniel like earlier when he's like saying, don't love. He's talking about Ravana. So he swears, he's like, I'm going to take down Kang forever. And he becomes Iron Lad and starts revolting against Rama Tut. Or he tries to. He fails. Rama Tut uses the gun you were talking about, what was it called?
Some diode ray.
Yeah, something diode or whatever. But he uses that on Nathaniel, Iron Lad, and uses him to, fight for him. I don't know who he like technically becomes. Like, there's a million different iterations. Changes his costume, and helps Ramatut in his war with Apocalypse.
Oh, okay.
And so the war's pretty much wrapping up, and keeps swearing revenge on Kang because also he used that diode thing on Ravana, which, pissed him off. So he's like, I'm swearing revenge on Kang. But once he gets to Kang, the Fantastic Four are defeating Kang.
Okay.
So, but Kang escapes, or Ramatut escapes, and we'll get to that later. But so the current Nathaniel Richards, the Iron Lad that he changed, goes to Apocalypse. And he's like, I will pledge my allegiance to you to destroy Kang. So Apocalypse is like, okay, cool. So Apocalypse sends him to a time period. I don't know specifically when, but it's got the Avengers, it's got Giant Man, it's got all them, and it's got Kang. And actually, I think it's from the comic you were just talking about, because it's got the Avengers, and then Kang escapes on this like UFO. So it's probably the second issue you're talking about.
I think so.
Which is super cool. That's so cool that they connect like that.
Nice tie-in right there.
Yeah. But so as he's escaping, he turns around and there's Nathaniel Richards, like the younger one that we've been talking about. And he's like, I'm going to kill you. And then This part's so funny. So Nathaniel's like, I'm going to kill you, Kang. And then Dr. Doom himself shows up on the ship because basically Dr. Doom sees this, because he can see whatever through mysticism. I don't know. That was one thing I was confused about that I got cleared up through Comics Explained. I was like, how did Dr. Doom know Nathaniel and Kang were both here? But he said it was like through mysticism. He can see it or whatever.
Classic explanation.
Yeah. I don't know. But he shows up.
Yeah.
And Dr. Doom is like, I'm going to kill you both. I'm going to kill Kang. And so then Nathaniel and Kang are like, all right, let's team up and get rid of Dr. Doom. So they get rid of Dr. Doom. And then Nathaniel kills Kang. He shoots him and he kills him.
Okay.
So a lot happens there, but it's really cool. And I like this line. Nathaniel says, I was made free of Kang, like in that moment. But in my head, that's kind of when he becomes Kang.
Yeah, I'm actually realizing.
Yeah, he gets rid of Kang, but then now he's going to become that Kang. So in that instance, he travels back to the Ramatut era, and then he becomes Ramatut. And so you start seeing it from the other side. And basically the whole time he's like making excuses like, oh, Ravana, she didn't see it the way what I was really trying to do, but he's really, and he's like, oh, and I ran out of time because the Fantastic Four comes. So you're starting to see it from the other side.
Yeah.
And that's when you see him escape from the Fantastic Four. And he ends up in that dystopian area that you were talking about. Dystopian era. And once again, meets Ravana. Obviously, it can't be the same Ravana.
Right.
But I think it's kind of like a thing, time travel. Like, there's always going to be a Ravana. There's always going to be, the essence of this woman that he loves.
It's kind of like, they explain it like, in Marvel's What If, the series, like kind of like a nexus point, like something's like destined to happen, kind of in a sense. Like kind of what it reminds me of, essentially. Ravana being Kang's nexus point, essentially. Yeah,
that's a great point. So he tries to get her. He's like, "I love you," and she denies him.
Oh,
this is when he like truly becomes Kang. He gets all these people. He like puts on this helmet that kind of like looks like the Kang helmet.
Mm-hmm.
He starts killing all these people in this dystopian era. And then I think he enslaves them to, for him to be Kang the Conqueror. He conquers them. So that's when he like does truly become Kang the Conqueror. Then he eventually travels to this kingdom, this one kingdom that isn't ruled by him. And guess who it is that's leading that kingdom? It's Ravana.
Whoa. Who would have guessed?
It's her. But this time, he does gain her love. He, because he's going to conquer it, and he sees it's her, and he's like, you know what? No attack. I'm not going to conquer this kingdom. And she starts seeing him for who he is. But his general, I forget his name. He's a weird-looking guy. Right as everything's going well for Kang, shoots her, kills her. So just like Spider-Man and Gwen, he's holding her dead body. He's like, no. And he says, a villain could not gain her love and a hero could not save her life. Pretty sad, pretty tragic.
Damn.
So then the finale of this whole thing, this part gets pretty crazy.
All right.
He puts her soul. Actually, this does explain the whole, like, how there's so many Ravanas, but still. He puts her soul into time.
Okay.
He puts her soul into time. He says, like a dye into threads of an entire tapestry. So, and then this is brutal. He like watches on like all these TVs, just him getting rejected over and over and over by Ravana. And that's brutal. Poor guy.
I'll turn any man villainous.
That's it. Like he kind of goes full Mr. Freeze in a way.
Okay.
I think it's a kind of a cool twist on that whole, because like he's got the Ravana that the guy killed in this like tube, kind of like Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Freeze, and that's her like soul going into the time stream.
Right.
And so it all ends with one of the Ravanas is like ends up there, and she's like, how could you do this to me? And they fight, whatever. And then it all ends with the beginning of this comic where he goes back and he's like, he's younger than I remember. And it's him in the library with Nathaniel Richards. And, when he like goes to teach him how to be Kang. And it's basically just shows, this is all
a loop.
Who Kang is. And actually, wait, I forgot the actual ending. It's really cool. At the very beginning, in the dinosaur era, when Nathaniel steals his armor and leaves him, Kang's like, you idiot, I've got so many of those armors. Like, so that actually, from there, I feel like is the new Kang. Like that you read is that whole like cycle of Kang. But you read about Nathaniel stealing the armor, going to do all the Ramatut stuff. But then he's like, I've got my own armor. And then he just goes out. So I think it's a really great place to start.
Definitely sounds like it. Definitely sounds like it because a lot of the stuff that you just said ties back into the classic issues I read. And if you don't want to read any Silver Age stuff, I feel like you read the Kang comic you just read, and you're set essentially. It's a different. It gives different perspectives of everything. For me at least, having read all the things that they basically Easter egg into the Kang comic where they go to ancient Egypt, Fantastic Four show up, they go to the Avengers show up Kang's an UFO, and it's kind of that dual perspective of I've already read these comics and I already know what happens in them, but seeing it from the perspective of Kang, is something that's interesting that I really like. That sounds really cool, especially with the whole interweaving the soul into time itself. Sounds great.
Dude, it's got that crazy stuff, but it also just makes him more of a relatable character, and it makes him more than just that Silver Age villain.
Definitely. But those were the two comic books we read individually. And now it's time for the comic we read. We both read at the same time, and that is Avengers Forever by Kurt Busiek. It was 1998, I think it was where the run started. Let me read you the synopsis of this real quick for everyone who's listening, if you guys haven't heard of Avengers Forever. Brief synopsis: 7 time-lost Avengers plucked out of the present, past, and future must protect their longtime ally Rick Jones from death at the hands of Immortus, the Master of Time. To learn why Rick has been targeted for elimination, the Avengers join forces with Kang the Conqueror, one of the team's deadliest foes. Whoa.
Whoa.
All right. Before we start, Rick Jones makes a great reappearance that I didn't expect. I didn't expect Rick Jones to have this huge legacy, I guess, because I read him Avengers #8. That I thought he was one of those normal human heroes that just tag along the superhero teams.
Yeah.
Team Brigade, all of that. And then reading this, he's basically the focal point of the story, which is interesting because I thought it was just one of those type of characters, like I just said. But having him being the focal point of this whole run is super interesting. But yeah.
One thing I liked about him that at least I felt this way, maybe I'm wrong. It felt like he kept that Silver Age type dialogue where it's kind of corny. It felt like he always talked that way. Not everyone else did. I found that funny while reading it. I liked it.
Definitely. Yeah. Now you say that. Yeah. He does keep kind of early.
Yeah.
Oh, not early.
Gee,
yeah. Twiddle my thumbs. I was okay, yeah, sure. It's great. So the comic basically starts off with a prologue. We're in the southern city of Ziara. I'm not pronouncing that right at all. I'm so sorry for everyone, but that's what's called allegedly. and is in the planet closest to the star of Beta Centauri in the 26th century. They kind of remind me of the people of like this planet. Kind of remind me of like Yondu.
Dude,
I feel like
I was gonna say that they have to be, right? They're literally Yondu.
They have like the blue skin, the red mohawk. I was like, what is this, like? Is like Yondu's civil like people? So I guess so. The way this starts, I think, is kind of like sets precedent of like the whole story, because everyone's going about their way. People are just like going out on a walk, doing stuff. We have these people about to steal some machinery, some plasma rifles, but then all of a sudden time just stops. Everything just stops. People, as I said, like just going about their days, doing what they do, but then they're just frozen in time, motionless. Nothing is happening until the roaring engines of spaceships appear and starts bombarding the ever living hell out of this side of the city, just like completely like, nuking it essentially. This part caught my eye. So there are I think 4 different types of squadrons drop down and eliminate the population, face to face in different ways. So first we got the hammer troopers, basically just like Thor's. They have their ionic hammers and they lay waste to temples, towers, and palaces. Then we got the repulsor troopers, basically just like Iron Men, and they target bridges, roads, and vehicles. Then up next we got the shieldsmen, Captain America, obviously, and they basically just like start slashing and hacking at people. And then last but not least, we got the micro swarm, and they basically go as I said in the comment, they fill in the cracks and go into homes, schools, nurseries, and they just like do as much damage as they can. And then later, this guy shows up called Johns Rickard. He's the commander of the Galactic Avenger Battalion, Theta 4, and bloodkin to the Emperor Rickard, who, in this time period, rules all, essentially. And he said that, I think he said, this was just a warning, saying, this is what happens when you, go against us, essentially.
He says that they defied the will of the mighty Avengers. So
kind of like rebelling against them because of, obviously he sounds like a terrible person.
Yeah, he's some kind of conqueror.
Or maybe.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We haven't read it all, only 1 through 6, so we can kind of make theories. But
yeah, and it's interesting because from this point on, we don't see him. It's just this is in the prologue of Johns Rickard, and we didn't. For the next 6 issues, at least from what we read, we haven't seen him or essentially heard from him ever again. So it kind of sounds like the kind of mystery of what happened, what caused this, who is this guy, and all this. So it kind of sounds like that mystery aspect of the story. Do you want to talk about chapter 1, Mind Out of Time?
Yeah, sure. First though, who do you think that was at the very end? When he's doing all that, there's these people in an alley. And they're like, this will not do at all. And then they just disappear. Do you think that's timekeepers?
I feel like it is because I think there's 3 timekeepers, as they said in the story. And they might be the timekeepers. That's what I'm assuming. Maybe they set this whole thing up. Maybe I'm not sure. Yeah. We're at this point we're speculating because we haven't read issues 7 through 12. So we're just speculating off of issues number 1 through 6 as of right now, but that's my guess, at least for now.
I think that's fun though. We get to kind of speculate as if it hasn't happened yet. But, so chapter 1, I got it pulled out right now in front of me because this was the first one that I read out of all the Kang comics, and it's probably the most confusing. But that's what I had to pull it out to kind of go over it. There's also a lot of narration, but I like the narration here a lot. I'm kind of usually 50-50 on narration bubbles, but I think it's done really well here because this is pretty convoluted stuff.
Right.
It really helps. So they're on the dark side of the moon or whatever?
Yeah,
where there's
the blue area, as
blue
they call
area.
it. Mm-hmm.
And this is after the Kree Skrull War, and they're here to save their friend. I was about to call him Jones Ricard, Rick Jones. They're here to save their friend Rick Jones. The Avengers go and talk to the Supreme Intelligence because Rick Jones, he's got that. I think it's what's that other hero that is eventually in this Captain Marvel?
Yeah,
he's got power from him tied within him, and they're talking to him. Eventually, they leave. Then this hooded figure comes and has a discussion with the Supreme Intelligence, and then eventually we see Immortus. I'm trying to go on a whim. Oh my god, dude! Like, it's so much. I feel like I cannot do it justice.
It's not our fault. It's just so dense.
Like, there's just so much ridiculousness that happens here. So this hooded figure comes, and then Tempest comes out. And then after Tempest comes out of a portal, then Kang is there. And then the army, Immortus has the Army of Time come out to fight Kang. And this part's really badass. Kang just fights the Army of Time, and it's really cool. And then they create
all by himself.
Time. Yeah. I forgot. He creates a time bubble because Immortus stops all of time. But in the time bubble, time continues to happen, and he just goes to town on the Army of Time. It's just killing them all.
Yeah.
And then Rick Jones is able to wake up because of the time bubble. And then these Avengers just kind of appear. And it's not the Avengers of our current time. It's Avengers scattered through time. It's Giant Man and the Wasp, and I think they are from current time. Then there's Captain America from the past when he was disheveled and he's he's thinking about quitting the Avengers or retiring, or he's all messed up. Then there's Captain Marvel, who is kind of a mystery. He doesn't really talk much. We don't. And then there's I forget her name. What is her name here?
Songbird
Songbird. She's a character I had never heard anything about.
Yeah,
she's
this
from
is my first
future.
time. Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing about her.
Yeah, and then there's a Hawkeye from the past, and a Hank Pym from the past when he was the
Yellow Jacket.
The Yellow Jacket. Yeah. So there's two Hank Pyms, and the team it's a very random Avengers team. But they just kind of fade in. They just kind of pop in.
Yeah.
I think who is it that summons them? Is it?
I think. Let me remember. So I think it was what was the hooded guy's name? Was it?
Yeah, he's another just complete random here.
Yeah. He's like one of the Zodiac. He's probably the Zodiac.
The Zodiac, yeah. I kind of looked up him, and he's just kind of like one of those old villains that.
It's like one of those one-shot villains.
Yeah, I don't think he really ever meant much.
Yeah. I think he taps into whatever force Rick Jones has within him and somehow pulls the Avengers from different time periods into the time period they're in right now. And then that's the team they're going to work with throughout this whole issue. What's funny is I just realized this earlier, like a couple minutes ago, we were saying like, I wonder who John's Ricard is, and I was like, oh, it's Rick Jones. I was like, oh wow, so that's pretty obvious. I'm ashamed I didn't get that. Pretty.
I didn't. I mean, when I was first reading it, I didn't get it either. Like when
I just got it just now. I was like, oh wait a minute.
Oh wait.
But yeah, we get this really, dare I say, uncanny team of Avengers. And it's interesting because they're from different time periods, especially with like the Giant Man and Yellow Jacket, because they're the same people, but like they're in different parts of like their own like story arc, I guess.
Yeah. And
then so once we get the Avengers from different times, they're all like, "What's going on? Like, why am I like? How are we here?" And such like that. And then Kang's like, "You either team up with me and we save the destiny of mankind, or don't and just like all lay waste at the grasp of Immortus." So contemplating that a little bit, but obviously really got no choice but to fight alongside Kang. They do, and they kind of learn about each other a little bit as they're fighting. Giant Man and Wasp are obviously like they're close together, so they're like observing everything. Like Yellow Jacket is Hank Pym from a different time period. Captain America, apparently it's like a shock that he's like super strong.
Yeah, I remember that too. I guess he had lost the serum at this point. I don't know.
Because
I also was confused by that part.
I always thought like he's always been super strong. Like, why do they question that he's super strong? But anyways, they fight, and then Immortus has like his spiel saying how like it's useless to fight against me. And then Kang's like, there's basically a dispute between Immortus and Kang. Immortus, like you said, with that one comic book you read, is like a more older version of Kang, and Kang is Kang. So like they kind of like hate each other because Kang doesn't like how he became, thus becoming Immortus, essentially. So that goes on, and then Rick Jones, I think, is tapping into his weird power, and then Immortus leaves and just leaves Kang and with the rest of the Avengers. They kind of mingle, they talk. And then what is this guy's name? Like the Libra. His name is Libra.
Libra.
Yeah.
Libra.
Jeez, I was like, who's it? Like, who is this guy? I'm like, is it flipping through all the Zodiacs? And I was like, which one is it? Oh, that's Libra. He's blind, but he's kind of like Daredevil in the sense where he's blind by like his senses are like heightened essentially. They're obviously all questioning what's going on. The thing I was kind of confused on the most is like the Supreme Intelligence role in this, other than like, activating Rick Jones's like inner power or whatever. So I kind of was confused.
It might have been Rick Jones who gets all the Avengers with his power. I think that is what happens. I think Rick Jones with his power brings the dude like
just like in the original Avenger from the 60s.
I will say, as we go on, I started to like it more and more.
Yeah.
And I can actually do a better job of like talking about the story once we get to this part, kind of. But yeah, I was just really confused in the beginning. Didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah, I was confused.
It kind of starts to piece itself together. I think I started to see where it was going.
Yeah.
Once it's them with Libra and they go to Chronopolis, that's when I started to get more invested, and I started to enjoy it a lot more. Everything before that, it's like, what is going on?
I don't know. So all the stuff like the Supreme Intelligence, I didn't care for. I'm like, what's like and like it's so dense with dialogue. I'm like, just get on with it. Like, oh my god. But I guess that's just the writing style. I guess you got exposition after exposition. Crank out as much exposition as you can.
It's a bit much, but once they get to, I guess we'll talk about that. They're in between time, and they're like, this is where we're safe from Immortus. They're with they're with Libra, and it's all these new Avengers, that are scattered from across time. And they're like, you know what? We're brave. We're going to Chronopolis. And he's like, I think that someone says like that's where you would be safest if you go to Chronopolis. They go to Chronopolis, and Immortus is there because He's a Mortis. He knows.
He knows all.
I don't know why they thought anything else would happen, but
Right.
they go there. They end up narrowly escaping, and Immortus gets the Forever Crystal, which basically, I think the way they describe it is like, if you don't have that, you can't change time. Like, it basically, without that, when you go back in time, you just create a different branch. But if you have the Forever Crystal, you can rewrite history.
Yeah, and like to add on that is like, there was like a lot of things that I kind of like grabbed from this comic that I think like was inspiration from like certain aspects of like Endgame, with like the whole branching of the timeline, saying like how you can't really change the past, you can only like have the timeline branch off into something else, just like how they explain it in an Endgame. And obviously we'll get to the other part later, but I just like that first thing where like it says like time branches off, you can't really change the past. My mind immediately went to like Avengers Endgame, how like they explain you can't do that.
It reminded me of the things in the Loki show where it's like, you know, that part where you can see the branches.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of that. But if you have the Forever Crystal, which it's in Kang's Sphinx, that's where the Forever Crystal is. I think it's in Chronopolis, I think. Somewhere in Chronopolis.
Wait, is it?
I don't know exactly where it's at, I'll be honest. But because then they end up taking the Sphinx to time travel. So it's somewhere in Chronopolis. I don't know.
Is it somewhere? It's somewhere.
It's out there.
In Chronopolis in and of itself was like weird because like it's like different time periods all like in one essentially. So like it's not our fault that we don't know about anything about Chronopolis, because even the people in the comic don't, like the characters don't know what Chronopolis is, because it's so it's so weird. So like, you know,
and there's a part where the I don't know who it is, but he's like, this isn't how it's supposed to be. I think because it's being destroyed, I think the time periods are supposed to be kept separate in Chronopolis, but because there's like war going on, it's all, you know, mix matched.
Yeah, kind of like cascading and like mixing and melding with each other.
But this is the part where I started to really like it, where they escape Chronopolis. They narrowly escape. They go into the Sphinx, and they're like, okay, there's these three, because now Immortus has the Forever Crystal, and they're like, there's these three separate points of time where, you know, I guess you want to call it a nexus point. I forget the term they use, but there's these three events happening that's, you know, messing with time. So they're like, okay, they assembled smaller teams and they go to them. The first one is my favorite. It's this distant future. You see the T'Challa that they all know, but he's older and he's the leader of the Avengers. And there's this alien race that's just completely taken over Earth, wiped through everybody. And you can see like it's changed the Avengers, and they even talk about that. Like there's this one badass panel where an old T'Challa is like holding up this skull with this vertebrae going down.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
I was like, dude, we need a comic series on this T'Challa and this time. Like, this was my favorite part, dude, because like there's also some lesser known characters. There's like this living lightning or something that was really badass character.
That was cool, yeah.
And they're just way more brutal because they have to be. Like,
yeah.
So that was my favorite part.
And like to add on to that, it was like a panel during when they first got there that is kind of like a paying homage to War of the Worlds. This is why it kind of got it. It's like War of the Worlds because like there's a close-up shot of a street called Wells Street, and I was like, and then like the next panel was like these like, because these are Martians essentially, or they're like from Mars and they invaded Earth. So I kind of like, at least this is what I think. It's like a H.G. Wells War of the Worlds influenced future essentially. That's what I got from it, at least, because I read War of the Worlds like 2-3 months ago, and that's kind of like the influence that I got.
That's really cool. I didn't know that.
I thought
there's also there's also a cool part I like where Cap and Black Panther are talking, and they're Cap's kind of explaining what's happening, and Black Panther's like, the Destiny War. Like, oh yeah. Like,
oh yeah,
he's from he's from the future. He already knows all this happened. So
right,
that part was really cool. Then, I always want to call him Black Jacket. I don't know why I always want to. I don't know why I always go to call Hank Pym Black Jacket. It's just the name in my head. But they go to like this old Western time. It's him, Songbird, and Hawkeye.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite one. I love
right,
the Wild West stuff.
You talk about this part then. This part was cool. I like this part a lot.
So, like you said, they're in the American Southwest in the year 1873. It is Songbird, Yellow Jacket, and Hawkeye. Conveniently enough, they brought a crate that has clothing of the time period.
I think it's some of Kang's stuff.
Yeah.
I think they say something about, Kang's stuff is really nice because it just transforms into the time period or something. They say something like that.
This is what a Hawkeye says. I don't know how this gizmo from the Sphinx knows how to spit out the right kinds of clothes for any era. So, I mean, that's explanation right there. Then they dress up in this old Western gear, which I think they look badass in it.
They do, dude. The panel is so cool.
Yeah. And then they meet. Well, who was there was one of them was fangirling over seeing these Western
Hawkeye.
legends. Hawkeye was fangirling over these Western legends because he's read a lot of the Western books and stuff like that. And they're like, oh my god, there's Rawhide Kid, the two gun kid. Who else was it? Kid Colt and stuff like that. You're like, oh my god, it's them. I read about them in the books, and they kind of observe and see what's going on. And Kang the Conqueror is right there. He's brought a Tyrannosaurus Rex, Wild West, because why not? You can. So obviously, in their instincts, they want to go and help, but Songbird said, "You can't. You can't go. You can't do anything about it because the Avengers will come soon because this already happened. All this already happened. The Avengers already went in the past, tried to defeat Kang, because essentially why Kang's there is because he wants to take over the 20th century, but in order to do that, he takes over the 19th century first. Of course. So Songbird says, don't do anything because he's going to lose anyways. The Avengers are going to go back in time and deal with Kang sometimes later, essentially. Yeah. So basically they run off and they try to go back to their chronosphere. That's the globe, basically the machines they go through in time.
I like this part.
But lo and behold, it's gone.
Yeah.
Completely missing. And then we cut back to Giant Man and the Wasp. Where are they? They're in California in the 1959, essentially.
The rest of the Western stuff is in the next issue. I forgot.
Yeah.
This part was my least favorite of the three.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Yeah, I was like,
This part, we've got Richard Nixon, who's a Skrull.
Yeah.
Who because I want to call him Captain Marvel, but he's a character I would love to know more about him as a character. I know next to nothing about him, and he's very mysterious here.
Definitely.
So you don't really get to learn anything, at least in these first 6 issues. But he can detect. He's got some kind of sense, cosmic sense, that he's a Skrull. And then these Avengers,
oh yeah,
of characters I've never heard of.
Yeah.
And they do. I think that's kind of explained why we've never heard of them. I don't know. Maybe they're in Marvel history, but they're like, oh, these people are trying to assassinate the president or trying to assassinate Nixon. So they go after Wasp and him. So yeah, this part.
That's good. Yeah, and I was like, nah, who cares? Yeah, I've only heard about one of them, and the only way I've heard is the 3D man.
He was kind of cool.
I thought it was kind of cool. Yeah, in his own unique way. But the only way I learned about him or know of him was if you go on Marvel.com and you can see a list of different characters. The only way I know him because I saw him 3D man. I was like, oh, okay, and I just kept scrolling. So that's it. That's my only like knowledge of 3D. Man. Just him.
3D, man. Scroll past.
Yeah, and it goes going out. Like, yeah. But then story continues on. We see Rick Jones just like monitoring everything, seeing like the things happening in different points. Then we go to I think is the future, and they're fighting these like alien robotic things.
This is actually when we see Black Panther with the stolen vertebrae.
It's funny because one of the people in the future, like I guess like you can call them like the future Avengers, is pregnant. But it's weird because she's an android, and they're kind of and then it's like a whole thing, like a kind of like a sub thing where like Jaima's like, that's weird. I want to like look into that further. Like, but I can't right now because we got to fight these.
I forgot that part, dude. He's like, that interests me, but I think we got bigger fish to fry.
And he brings it up like 3 more times before he actually does it. He's like, I want to like inspect you or something like that. He does it 3 times. I'm like, okay. But then, like you said, we get T'Challa holding the head with the spine up in the air with his speech and everything. So cool. And basically, I think is this the part where they say they had to go to Wakanda? Basically, I think they're trying to go after like the Martians, but like they're trying to figure out how to do it. I think that's like a message where like they say we have to go to Wakanda, but that happens.
This was that part. I guess I was getting ahead of myself where Captain America and them are like, y'all seem, a little ruthless. And he says, if we seem bloodthirsty to you, I can assure you that in the past 10 years, we have been given good reason.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Like, if we seem bloodthirsty, we are. We
got a reason why.
Yeah.
Then, unfortunately, we go back to the 1959 with, a giant man Wasp with the other Avengers.
There's like a giant hairy Hulk ape guy.
Oh yeah.
Oh, there's also like I don't know what her name is. She's like Cupid, basically. She like makes you fall in love.
I thought that was weird. I thought that was unique to say the least. I thought that was pretty unique.
Give it that.
Yeah. Of course they fight for a little bit, and then they get subdued, and they're trying to say like how like Nixon is a scroll, basically, like what you said. It's just basically this whole like going back and forth, like exchanging like why they're there, essentially, because like Wasp is trying to say that we're from the future, and then was it Marvel Kid? Is his name Marvel Kid or something like that? Marvel Boy. His name is Marvel Boy. Basically peers into the mind of Wasp, see if she's telling the truth or not. Lo and behold, she's telling the truth. And then they like basically tell like them what's going on, essentially. The thing is, like, the Avengers of that time period were like shocked that the team of the Avengers lasted for, and I was in their time period, 40 years. Like, we lasted that long.
Yeah, that part is cool. Yeah,
that's like, the only part that's cool so far. Yeah.
The only part that really got me. Yeah. Hey, I will say the art when they're fighting, also the art throughout the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, this time period of art is my favorite, but the art of when they're fighting is awesome.
Yeah,
it's always a joy to look at. I'll give it that.
Yeah, definitely. Then luckily we go back to a more interesting time period back in Tombstone, Arizona of 1893. They're trying to figure out like what happened to the chronosphere, and then Kang pops up behind them saying like, "You fools! You think you can subvert me?" And then basically just like says, they just like laughs in their face, like, "Yes, I stole. You're never gonna get it," and just like leaves.
And it's I love that. It's a projection. It's not even him.
Yeah,
he's like, "You fools," and they try and fight him. It's not even him.
Yeah, he's like, "You think I'll sully my hands for like for a minor annoyance?"
I love that part.
Yeah. And then Kang just blows up the whole cave that they stashed the thing in.
Just explodes.
Yeah. And then the three of them meet up with, I think these were cool I feel like I wish they, like, I wonder if they have like their own like a series with like all the gunslingers of Marvel.
Kid Colt, all them.
Yeah, they meet with not Blueface Freak, but they meet with Black Rider, Reno Jones, and Kid Cassidy. So they meet with them. They're like, we heard that you're, because they misinterpreted what they said because they think that Hawkeye, Yellowjacket, and Songbird are with Kang, but they're actually trying to find Kang to like get back to the Chronosphere. So they have like this whole exchange and stuff like that, and then they're saying how like the Reno Jones, Kid Cassidy, and the Black Rider, they're also known as the Gunhawks. They're with them and they're there to help them. And then basically, with Hawkeye being the fanatic he is, he catches he feels a little suspicious about everything, and then he goes to shake hands with Kid Cassidy, and then basically just like body slams into the ground, saying like they're fake, they're imposters essentially, and they're actually, this is another mystery that pops up. They're space phantoms, which I think it's later said that there's only one. There's only one.
They
space
thought there
phantom.
was only one. Yeah.
And like
they serves
Kang.
They're with Immortus.
Oh, Immortus. Yeah,
they're goons of Immortus, basically.
Gotcha.
So because then we see in just a minute, we see them in the 1950 era with Nixon. Ugh. They also show up there.
Right.
And that's when Immortus basically shows up in that 1950s era. That's why I was going to talk about why we might not know who they are, because with the Forever Crystal, he just wipes that time period away, or that moment away.
I thought it was crazy. Like they just wiped the whole timeline.
That part was so cool, and I was like, "Yeah, get rid of them. I don't want those guys anymore."
A funny part is when basically because Immortus is basically disguised as like a general essentially in this part. Yeah, and he shakes Nixon's hand, and then like Nixon turns to a scroll, and it's just like the panel of the scroll trying to run away while everyone's just throwing trash at him. I just thought it was hilarious. I don't know why. Well, I thought it was very funny because there's the scroll trying to run away, and like there's like chucking like Coca-Cola bottles at him, like trash, everything. I thought that was funny, but like just the whole erasure of like that whole timeline. That's where it's like it's getting down to like intense like stakes essentially.
That's crazy, like erasing a whole timeline just because you can.
And then we go to the issue number 6, our final issue we're going to be discussing today. Marvel, Captain Marvel, and is it Wasp? Yeah, it's Wasp. Basically, narrowly escaping the erasing timeline, and they go back to the Sphinx. Rick Jones is there, and it's kind of like weird because like there's flickers of different instances where like Immortus has like influenced different like events throughout like Avengers or just like in general Marvel storylines essentially. And then it's like this whole thing with like what was I getting at? It's all just the whole thing how like Immortus just like has influenced different aspects of different things already, and like they're kind of like freaking out because like what hasn't he influenced? He could influence everything, or like it's like a whole thing, and then they jump to the future once again, and Cap is like kneeling in front of like the Avengers statue, being like depressed and all as he has been this whole series so far.
Yeah, yeah. Poor Cap. Felt bad for Cap most of the series. But yeah.
Then this is what I was saying earlier, where like they had to get vibranium in order to
yeah, this was that part. Yeah.
But to operate the Wakandan spaceship they have. So they go down to like whatever's left because I think what was it? Yeah, so there's very little vibranium left behind. So they're trying to figure out like how to like where to get it and stuff like that. But then they were attacked by these like yellow creatures essentially.
This part was really cool, I thought.
Yeah. so they're being attacked, obviously, and then what's her name? More is it the lady with like the wings, the golden lady?
Yeah.
What was her name again? What's her name? Oh, here it is. Oh, it's not there. Whatever. Glowing butterfly lady comes out, and just as when this is appearing, when this is happening, the synthetic robot lady Jocasta goes into labor, and then the glowing lady has like Captain America kind of like in a trance, essentially. But then we cut back to the Sphinx, where they see like they're starting to question like how is space phantasm at these different points at like these, not only in like these different points, but like in multiple forms, essentially. And so they're kind of like questioning that, and then cuts back to the Wild West storyline, where it's like Yellow Jacket and Hawkeye are kind of butting heads over like who's like best the captain of everything.
Yeah.
So they're kind of butting heads in that aspect. But they decided to go back to Tombstone and trying to fight Kang, essentially try to get back to Chronosphere. And once they do go back to Tombstone, they are greeted by Kang on the saloon. And then from that saloon is erected this monument, or just like kind of like a citadel, essentially. He calls it his citadel for conquest of the 19th century. And then Hawkeye, Yellow Jacket, and Songbird infiltrate the citadel. But it's at this point where they become a little suspicious of Songbird, because it appears that she knows a little too well.
Yeah.
So, like, I read it in the Avengers files, and then they're like, okay, that's like very interesting how you know that specific thing in the Avengers files.
Yeah.
So they enter the citadel, and the thing that really gives it away was like, because like Yellow Jacket keeps hitting on Songbird all the time, and then she starts to flirt back with him just like a little bit, and then Yellow Jacket's like, yeah, no, and then like backhands her essentially, saying like, yeah, that can't be you. And I think it's was it Space Phantom, I think.
Yeah, Space Phantom.
And then cut back to the future. Basically, the glowing lady is communicating to them via emotions, essentially, saying how like, what's she even saying?
With the vibranium.
Yeah, the vibranium. So we're at this point in time where like T'Challa has to make a choice either to save Jocasta, because she and her baby are about to die, essentially. And she has to choose between either saving their lives or using the whatever vibranium's left to fuel the spaceships and go and attack and basically decimate the invaders. And obviously, T'Challa, being the good guy, chooses to save Jocasta and the baby.
Yeah, that part was my favorite for sure. Everything that had to do with the T'Challa Cap.
Yeah,
I found that to be. I wish they would have focused more on that. Just overall.
Me too.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Then,
what were you gonna say?
No, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, just making him decide, either save these two people, or they came back for that vibranium,
right,
or use what they, and having him make that choice, even though he was, more brutal, more bloodthirsty in this time period, he still was himself. He still was T'Challa.
Exactly, and to add of just like the scale and scope of that future, there's only 50,000 people left on like the whole planet.
Yeah.
So like he's been dead set on this for like a while now, but like, and just like having to do that choice was like difficult for him. But he obviously knew like what the obvious choice was to do.
Yeah.
So jumping back to the Wild West, they're both fighting. Hawkeye and Yellow Jacket. They're both fighting because Hawkeye thought that like Yellow Jacket is betraying them essentially, but like Yellow Jacket's like, no, that's Space Phantom. He's been he disguised himself as Songbird essentially. And then they explain all that stuff. Then cutting back to the future, obviously the part where like she gives birth, and then Cap and T'Challa talk about like the choice that T'Challa made, and he said like, yeah, I did it because he's Black Panther essentially. What was next? Then we get to the part where like they're about to go back, and they're going back to the Sphinx essentially. So they all re-meet up there at the Sphinx, and basically exchanging what happened and all that stuff. And again, Yellow Jacket is trying to make his move on Songbird, and then Songbird's like, because Yellow Jacket says, but if you're feeling grateful, I'm pretty sure the Sphinx has plenty of dark, comfortable corners, and we could go looking at for them. What do you say? Songbird says, "What do I say? What do I say? This is what I say," and basically just like sucker punches him in the gut, saying how like you forget that you're still married to the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, in your time period, and she is my friend, and I could not in any capacity do that to her.
Yeah.
So she puts Yellow Jacket into a reality check essentially.
I like a lot that. So I didn't really know about like that time period where Cap was distraught like that, and was thinking about giving up. I didn't really know about all that, but this kind of makes it to where T'Challa was kind of one of his inspirations to come back, because you can see like when they're leaving T'Challa, he says like, "Today you made like the day a little bit brighter." Like he's like, "The world is a dark place, but you made it a little bit brighter." So right. I think that's cool that you can call it a retcon, call it whatever you want, but when you look back at that time period of Cap, one of the reasons he was, he came back to being the Cap we know is because T'Challa inspired him, which I think is really cool.
It's a really neat callback and everything, making like the Captain America to who he is, instead of being like all like down on his luck about everything. And then they kind of just like rally, see like what to do, like how are we going to defeat Immortus, and then like the plan is essentially to go to Limbo itself, go directly to where Immortus is, and that's kind of like the plan. And what I thought was interesting is during like when his last was it Giant Man's last like word bubble, it kind of like ripples in like a more like in like a villainous sense, like the way the bubble is structured. It's like kind of makes it seem like he's not who he is.
Yeah,
could be like another Space Phantom essentially, because was it Rick Jones and Captain Marvel said like they don't feel good about it. There's something about this that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And that's where we end off the end of issue number 6 and the end of the first half of Avengers Forever. Overall, I liked it. You already mentioned it earlier. The artwork is really great. It's just like it's so dense, and there's just so much going on, so much information being thrown at you, so much exposition being said. It's just like the density of everything, and like often time travel stuff is kind of confusing. So overall, what do you think? How you felt about this first half?
Yeah, art 10 out of 10 for sure, no doubt. The story, I think it's really good. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
It has its weak points. The 1950s era is not that great. I think it's very jumpy with the story. I think I would have rather, maybe not 3, maybe just focus on 1 or 2. I think it's a little too jumpy, but overall, it's a really cool story. It's unique. I had a lot of fun with it. I definitely am going to reread 1 through 6 as we go into 7 through 12, because I feel like there's a lot I just didn't retain. And like I said, I really liked it, so I want to reread it. And I will say what I think is happening, I guess a little theory before we quit talking about it. I think at the beginning, those are the Timekeepers, and they went to the Immortus, and they're like, hey, you've got to get rid of Rick Jones. Just get rid of him. Because he comes Jones Ricard and he starts, taking over whatever. So I think that's what he's trying to do. And the Avengers just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And Kang's trying to stop him because he's like, you can't mess with time like that. You can't do this. Just because you're a Mortis, the one that you can't just go out and do this. So I think that's why Kang's trying to stop him. And yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's gonna be definitely gonna be the big twist. This like the timekeepers all along. But with that being said, that was our discussion of the first half of Avengers Forever. Definitely tune in next time because we will be covering the latter half of the episodes, or not the episodes, but the issues of issue number 7 through 12. I do feel like they're gonna incorporate a lot of what happened here into Quantumania, especially with like the Chronopolis. There's already been like speculation, like during some shots of when they're in like the microverse, how people say, or like,
I know what you're talking about. Quantum Realm, yeah.
They might be like that's where Chronopolis is essentially, and so just like a lot of like theories being thrown out there. I feel like the Forever Crystal.
You think it exists in the MCU?
It might, or they might allude to it, either in Quantumania or in Kang Dynasty, whatever. They might allude to it in the future sense, but I just feel like there are some elements from this they can borrow, not only from like Avengers Forever, but from like the other stories of Kang that we've read. Like I hope in like some way or fashion, at least like for the Fantastic Four movie, they touch upon Rama Tut, that being the first like interaction of Kang, or just like the was it the Council of Kangs? Was it you said?
Yeah.
I almost guarantee that's gonna happen because was it in Loki? They say how there's like a bunch of other variants of Kangs much worse than him. So I feel like they already have Council. And to bounce off like the Loki stuff and like just overall like MCU stuff, I feel like there's like a lot of things they borrowed from like these sort of stories and implement to like Loki, and going back even further, Avengers Endgame with like having the Avengers dispersed into 3 different groups in different time periods, trying to like investigate. And I was going to say investigate like the chronal anomalies is what it's called. I thought it was interesting, and like the branching of the timelines as we see in Loki, and especially in the finale, how like everything just like branches off. And I think Kang says that like he wants like the timeline to be like a forest, like a jungle, like different branches, like just like mingling and everything like that. So I just feel like there's like a lot of connections with like the stuff we've read and the stuff we discussed in this episode that ties into like all like the stuff we already watched and the stuff that's yet to come, essentially.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if they take inspiration from this Avengers Forever story. I mean, we haven't finished it yet, but that would be a big task. That would be pretty crazy. Like, what Avengers would they pull from the past, from the future?
Yeah.
What would...
There's like, I mean, I hate when people do this. A lot of people would like say like, a rumor is happening, but like they say like it's official, it's happening, but like there's not, like it's like who knows? Like I wouldn't be surprised if they got like the early 2000s like X-Men, Tobey Maguire, what I want if they do go that route and grabbing like the OG like superheroes. I really want them to bring like the OG Fantastic Four, especially with the fact that Chris Evans played the Human Torch, and like a big like seeing like when like the people, the MCU 616 universe of the MCU see the Human Torch, like you're Captain America, and he's like, no, I'm the Human Torch. I feel like that'd be like a pretty cool like interaction there.
Yeah,
but like I feel like they'll pull definitely for like at least Secret Wars. They're gonna pull from different aspects, like having Robert Downey Jr. back for that one movie. Even though he's probably got asked for like half the budget of the movie to be in the movie essentially.
Yeah,
but who knows?
Who knows, man? That's such a rabbit hole of what they could do. There's so much they could do now. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And like again, whatever you see on the internet, just take it with a grain of salt. Especially if it's on Twitter. Don't take it seriously unless there's a reliable source backing it up. But there are a lot of elements, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more once we read the latter half of the story. There will be a lot of elements that will be influencing the current or future projects of the MCU. I mean, I hope so. I hope they adapt the Teen Brigade and Rick Jones. That'd be great.
Bring them all. Bring them all to the MCU.
Teen Brigade trilogy. Kevin Feige, make it happen.
Oh my god. The Teen Brigade, Ricard Jones. Ricard Jones will be the next Kang.
The big bad. It's gonna be the big bad. The Rick Jones, or was it John Ricard?
Ricard Jones. I don't know.
He's gonna end the entire MCU saga. That's gonna be the last villain. It's not gonna be Galactus. It's not gonna be Annihilus. It's not gonna be any of those people. It's gonna be John Ricard. And the Team Brigade. So
that's nobody's got theories about that about that but us. You won't see that on TikTok.
You heard it here first, folks. Inside scoops of the future of the MCU. Ricard Jones, Rick Jones, whatever his name is, he's gonna be the end all, basically the anti-monitor of the MCU. So it happens. Heard it here first. All right. So with that being said, do you have any last thoughts, opinions, statements, or anything like that?
No, not really.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to our reviews and discussions about the Kang comic books we read. Hopefully you guys go pick it up in your local LCS. If not, or you don't have a local comic book shop near you, you can always go on Marvel Unlimited or Comixology, or if you have a library card, you go on a thing called Hoopla, which I use more often. If you have a library card, it's basically you log in with your library information, and it gives you a whole catalog of like free comic books. It's great.
Yeah, there's so many ways to read comics. There's so many cheap ways, or if you want to be like me, waste your money, you can do that too. You know,
definitely. And I think there is a Kang. I'm pretty sure it's a Kang omnibus coming out soon. It's called The Saga of the Once and Future Conqueror.
I think I saw it in my LCS. It's it's a trade, but it's a complete collection. It's one of those fatter trades.
Gotcha.
I think it just came out, you know.
Okay.
They know how to promote their stuff with the movie.
Definitely.
They know,
if only they put like ads of like the comic books before they show like the movies, like, you know,
they should,
like,
dude.
I remember seeing it once. I forgot for what instance. Oh, it was for the Batman. Like before, I like one the advertisements they put up before the trailers. They put up like Matt Reeves talking about Batman Ego, Year One, Long Halloween, and they promote it and saying like you can go to online or go to your local bookstore, comic book store, and like get it. These are the comics that influence this movie. So I feel like Marvel and DC should have like that at the beginning of, you know, the screenings of like their movies. So like are the comic books that influence this movie. So go check it out.
That's surprising that they don't, you know, like just like instead of or just like an additional movie trailer. It's just like
exactly. And I know like ever since like the announcement of like the new slate for
the DC, the comics have shot up.
Yeah, I know like was it Authority and Supergirl sold out. So that's good. But obviously, check out that Kang complete collection. It collects his first 2 appearances along with some other essential storylines. It also collects Timeless. So definitely go check that out.
Yeah, it does.
With that being said, I've been your host, Orion, and along with
Woody.
And where can they find you on social media?
Woody307 TTV is my Twitter, and then Woody307 is my Twitch. Tonight's
Awesome.
going to be, well, this will be in the future, but I'll still say it because it's fun. I'm streaming a retro Harry Potter game tonight, the Quidditch World Cup.
That's awesome. That's cool.
And then tomorrow, and I'm going to be dressed as Harry Potter for the stream, and then tomorrow.
I'm definitely checking it out.
Dude, and then tomorrow I'm going to stream the release of Hogwarts Legacy. So.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Pumped.
Awesome. So definitely go check out his Twitch, especially if he does more Harry Potter video game content. Hopefully he keeps dressing up as Harry Potter.
I will be doing more Harry Potter video games, and I'll have to dress up. So, yeah.
Definitely. So, honestly, go check him out. You can find me on Instagram and on TikTok at Orion Scott Comics, and over on Twitter, Orion Scott Comic without the S at the end. With that being said, we've been your hosts here at Comics from the World, and continue reading comics.